Hey everybody, welcome to Virtual VanCAF. This is the Webcomics panel.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I am Alina Pete. I have done the webcomic WereGeek since 2006, which is a really long time ago. It's at weregeek.com. We'll do a post with all our socials and all kinds of things, but who wants to introduce themselves?
I will.
Cool.
I'm Sam Logan. I did a webcomic called Sam and Fuzzy for 17 years, and I just finished it. Although I'm just doing other comics on the same website now, samandfuzzy.com.
My name is Jam. I did the webcomic Wasted Talent from 2004 to 2016. That was an 11-year run. The Best of Wasted Talent is currently running Tuesdays and Thursdays at wastedtalent.ca.
I'm Corey Bing. I've been doing my comic Skin Deep since 2006, and it's still currently running on skindeepcomic.com.
That's my dog, Ollie. He doesn't do comment.
Pointy boy.
I'm Jeff Jacks. I do the comic questionable content. I've been doing that since 2003, so however long that's been. I'm bad at math, but it's been
a long time.
17 years? Is that how math works?
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Jeebus.
Oh, God.
So
suffice it to say, we've been around.
Yeah, we are all old.
we've done a lot of webcomicking. All of us have been doing webcomics for more than 10 years. And a lot of things have changed in that time, like basically everything except just draw a comic and post it on the internet.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I guess my first question for everyone is, what has changed the most over the years? Other than us, because, you know, we all got old. It's a thing.
Social media, I would say.
Yeah.
Everything's become a lot more centralized than it used to be when I started.
I actually, I have this, I agree, but I experience it more as distributed. So it used to be for me that it's like, I post on my website and whatever happens, I'm expecting people to come to my website to experience my comic. But now I have to optimize an experience for Webtoon, for Facebook, for Twitter, for Instagram, for Tumblr, like anywhere I want to try and gather an audience. People aren't going to leave their social media bubble to come to me, so I have to go to them. So that's a pretty significant change.
Because like when I started, I just had my website. And it was just a standard basic website. I maybe was on like a comics web ring, and then I had some Project Wonderful ads, and that's how I built an audience.
I still have tried to keep my website centralized, but I always have like a big preview that I will post to Tumblr and Twitter and Instagram, and make sure that people see it and want to come over to and read the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty. It seems to be working pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't really put my comics on social media very often. Like I have the social media stuff and I post art there and I occasionally post like links to the site and everything, but my comic is like so story driven and like the individual comics are very rarely kind of like digestible in a standalone way. So I just find I don't tend to get much of a response when I put them on social media anyway. I find like the best thing I get is like posting like other kinds of art, like and things that are more accessible on social media, and then when people become my fans that way, they maybe become more interested in going and reading the actual comic. Like
definitely, I feel like posting like my dinosaur art and stuff on social media has gotten more people to come and check out the comic than posting the comic out of context on social media.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like both of you do very story-driven comics, so posting just one page out of context isn't really linkable. Like nobody's going to share that and just be like, look at this funny thing that requires you to read, 2 years before to know what's going on.
So relatable, 600 pages worth, so relatable.
Whereas Jam, I feel like Wasted Talent is a little bit more linkable because it's sort of like, you can link just one comic and be like, hey, this is a thing that happened.
I hope so. I want to think so. But it's, I'm still trying to, I've been testing a lot of different things and I'm still trying to navigate social media and what makes something shareable. One thing that I'm trying right now is cropping out basically the punchline. So what happened to me a few times throughout my original run was that people would just crop out the punchline from a comic and it would get posted as a meme, right?
Right.
And with no social whatsoever and no links to my comic. So it's people would come up to me like, oh wow, I've seen this, it's a huge meme, that must be awesome for you. But actually
like, yeah, it's great, I've made $0
not so
Right.
awesome.
And no one
So-
knows who did it.
Yeah, so my strategy has been to, it's like, well, I will just, it's a rerun now, so I'm taking what I feel is probably the most memeable section of the comic and just posting it myself, hoping that that generates more shares and more interests. I don't know how much traction that is. I kind of have to post a couple of other things to compare. And I would like to post the full comic elsewhere, but I don't know. I'm still testing stuff. I feel like it's comics. If someone feels like they've cracked this, I really would like to know.
Yeah.
I feel like with webcomics, it's been just like since 2006 for me. Just trial and error since the beginning. It's like it's just constantly changing. There's never a thing. It's like, well, this worked last year, so it's going to work for the rest of my life, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's the constant struggle.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like I'm friends with Sarah Grayley, who does Our Super Adventure and a whole bunch of print comic stuff, and she has like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, and that website is just utterly alien to me because I'm old. And
Yeah.
That's me and Pinterest. I can't crack Pinterest. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I can't crack Discord, so maybe we can all like.
Ooh, I've run games on Discord.
There we go.
Discord is great.
Yeah.
You
It
remember
seems like everyone
IRC? It's just IRC.
Except its UI is way worse than IRC.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really bad.
And people keep changing their names.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like everyone has like their stopping point of social media, where it's just like I'm full up. I cannot figure out a new one yet, and like
I'm too old for this.
I can kind of do Instagram. I've been doing that with my pins and stuff, and have been good with that. I can't figure out Facebook. I can't figure out Pinterest. I haven't been able to crack like webtoons and stuff. I can't my brain's just like, no, you've done too much.
I think
maybe let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk about like some of the stuff that's working for us now. Like I know, Sam, you post a lot on Instagram. A lot of your art that's sort of non-Salmon Fuzzy related or related tangentially. Like, how has that affected your readership on your comic?
0%.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah, because I know you've had some really memeable stuff.
Yeah, it's like, I guess, I feel like it's very. I have a way of thinking of things as being very compartmentalized, and it's like I know I'm like. I think of myself as a cartoonist and a comics person first, but I feel like every component, like everything that I do, I kind of like treat it as its own thing, like, and so maybe I'm not like benefiting from a lot of the like cross traffic and stuff, but like it's just like it's all about like what the strength is of that particular thing. And it's like if I was doing like short like diary comics or like things that could split up in individual panels, Instagram would be great for that, right? Like, and I've seen people doing it, and like, like that kind of content is very relatable, and those kinds of comics where you can like just flip through the panels individually, that stuff does great. And occasionally, if I make a thing like that, I'll put it there. But it's like I mainly have Instagram because it is a vector for people who are interested in getting commissions of their pets. A big part of my comic stuff is doing comics about like dogs and cats and stuff like that. And I just found from like meeting people at conventions that audience is very mobilized on Instagram, and as soon as I had an Instagram account, that started being the primary way that people would contact me when they wanted dog portraits. So it's like I have Instagram because of that, basically.
Yeah,
I
which
had
is something
Tumblr.
that your comic doesn't really promote. Like people don't come to your comic and go, "I should get that guy to draw my pet."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like on this, by the same token, it's like I had a Tumblr for a long time that I updated, and I had some stuff that was very popular on Tumblr. But at some point, I realized that like nothing was coming from Tumblr that was useful to me in any way, so I just stopped posting there.
Yeah, I get a lot of traffic from Tumblr. And
it makes sense. I think maybe because the audience is there, but it's like for me, the kinds of people that I was attracting on my Tumblr with the stuff that I was posting there were just not interested in any other aspect of my work at all, and they weren't buying anything, and they weren't clicking links to go to the stores or stuff. And so a certain point was like I could post like a funny like quirky comic on Tumblr and it would go viral or whatever, but it would just dissipate and be stolen by everybody. So I
Yeah.
stop. It's not worth it for me. Like, you know,
Yeah.
but it depends on your crowd. So yeah. Like I'm using Instagram a lot because it seemed like that is where my people were. But
Yeah, I feel like that's a big thing with webcomics in general is that everyone has something different that like stuff works for. Like Tumblr works for me, it doesn't work for you. Instagram works
Yeah.
for some people, it doesn't work for others. And like you can't just go just put your stuff up on these 3 sites and you'll do okay, because it's so like personalized to the cartoonist and their audience.
Yeah.
I
can't imagine
agree
trying
with
to start
that.
a webcomic today. Like you'd have to post on
I have
so
no
many different
idea.
things.
I have no idea how to start one today.
Like the only universal advice that works right now is get a friggin' Patreon. Like that's the
yeah.
only thing.
Yeah.
And
You were
who
gonna say
knows
that,
how
Jen.
long that's going to be applicable.
I would say that that's another thing that has changed in a really big way, is that I have noticed myself curating not only the formatting for different social media, but I almost curate which project goes on which social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm finding that Instagram works better for illustrations, Twitter works okay for comics still. Tumblr is really good for more complete pieces. So when I finish a zine or something like that, I post it to Tumblr, and that's a better experience. Corey, I'd be really interested to see to hear what you have found success with on Tumblr as well. I think it's still a really interesting platform.
Yeah, a lot of it's community. I've been on Tumblr since, I think I've had a Tumblr account since 2006 when I started my comic, or however long ago it's been. And it used to be just to post updates to the comic, and then when I started using it more for social stuff. So I've kind of just been building an audience there for a number of years, and I have my own Tumblr for the comic. So if some people just want to get updates of the comic, they can just follow that instead of following my personal Tumblr and things like that. And it's just, yeah, and I usually will post, sorry, big loud motorcycle outside. Usually I'll post like big preview panels that's like a big version of a panel that it's a high-res and doesn't have the dialogue on it, so people can see, like, here's the big peak picture, rather than being like, why should I follow this? There's no reason to. Like, well, if you follow this, you get to see a big version of one of the panels, and people seem to like that. So, but you're right, Jam, about posting zines. I've gotten a lot of positive reinforcement in posting like my full zines to like a post, and then it'll go around.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, navigating multiple posts on Tumblr has always kind of sucked. But like one big page with a whole bunch of content on it, it's pretty cool, and it's easy to share. And
yeah, and whenever I can offer something that's an experience that's more complete, that's kind of the strategy that I'm working towards right now. Is that I want to make these small, capturable, complete experiences. So instead of posting regularly and building up that relationship with that audience, I'm investing a lot of time into like one thing, posting it all at once, and then like getting like a spike of interaction, so to speak. Translating that into any kind of relationship or follow through, I still haven't cracked yet, but
I feel like you can kind of start doing stuff like that through Patreon. Like if you can attract people from your complete postings to your Patreon, then they'll follow you through there rather than following you through one single comic like they used to. Like I know you and I have talked about that a lot, Jam, because I'm in the stage where I'm wrapping up my comic, and I'm going to start another project afterwards. And I want to do something that's much shorter. Like you said, like a little complete bundle that's maybe 14 to 20 pages. People can read it, people can link it, it's complete, it's done. Maybe there'll be a sequel to that, but maybe not. And I feel like people these days want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I dream about stuff like that. Like, oh, small little like 12-page comics that are done.
Right?
I know, right?
I want to do those.
That's so nice.
That's like what I've shifted into. Like I still think of the website as being the primary, like it's like the most important thing for me to keep updated is the website. And it's just because that audience, like it is true, people are like less in the habit of going to individual websites they did, but the people who do like that, they are the most dedicated, and they are doing the thing that is kind of not the default behavior anymore, but like they are still going to the website, so they're the most hardcore fans, they buy the most stuff, they back the Patreon the most. Like it's, for me, that's the most important thing. So when Sam and Fuzzy finished, I've continued to keep updating that site on the same schedule, but just doing shorter stories. And like, that's kind of the thing that I want to do for the next little while, is just like, I mean, I did one comic that was like about 20 pages long, and now I've like just wrapped up one that was about 100 pages long. So like,
a short one.
A short one.
like,
Yeah.
like by my standards, like that is a short, thing.
It was less than 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was like maybe like for 4 months I did that story, and I'd like to kind of keep doing like things of varying lengths like that, and just like try lots of different stuff.
I've almost noticed that like I have like two different audiences, where I have like the really committed comic audience that have been around for a long time and are really, really involved and excited about comic updates. And then there's also the group of people that are around for like my smaller works, my shorter pieces, or my dinosaur art, or my pin stuff. And there's like, I wouldn't be able to say which audience is better, because both of them are great in different ways. Like I feel like my comic audience, I think, is smaller than my kind of more, I don't want to say casual audience, but they are way more dedicated. And usually if I have something to sell, they're the first ones in line for it. And like, they're kind of ride or die fans. And it's just kind of interesting to see the difference between like what your work does and who it attracts, and who sticks around for it.
Well, it's all kind of diversification, right? Like whether it's putting one project in as many places as you can, or doing a whole bunch of different things that appeal to different people. It's kind of
well, I feel like the business model of comics have changed, and that's kind of reflective of it, because it used to be you have your website, you put ads up on that website, you make a little money, maybe you can quit your day job. And these days ads are definitely not as big a thing as they used to be, even like 5 years ago.
Well, even when I started in 2006, it was like I never made any money on ads, like even way back then.
I think I'm the only person I know who still makes decent money off of ads, and I have no idea how, like, for whatever reason.
I guess my question, how does it compare to like 5 years ago? Because you've been making money off ads for a long time.
I would say it's probably gone down, but I haven't experienced the kind of precipitous drop that literally everybody else I know has.
Yeah, like I used to be able to almost pay rent off of my ads, and now it's like maybe I can pay a one bill.
I think the most I ever got off ads is like I was able to buy a pizza every once in a while. So it wasn't like it wasn't nothing, but it wasn't never paid my bills.
Yeah, I'm down to pizza money for sure for ads. Which is, it's hard. Like there definitely is a very long tail on what you can get for advertising.
Yeah, and it's such a numbers game, and it's so hard to get the numbers for a website up to the point where it's like profitable ad-wise anymore, because people aren't going to websites as much as they were even 2 years ago, let alone 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think if I was giving advice to somebody starting out now, I'd be like, diversify as much as possible, post to as many different places as possible, and then focus on your Patreon as a way to make money, instead of even like thinking about ads or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, in terms of like return on the amount of like time and effort invested, right now Patreon is definitely
absolutely.
But I don't know if I agree with that advice. I don't know. I think for right now that makes a lot of sense. But I really fear the rug getting pulled out.
Yeah, I don't like
and it could happen tomorrow.
I like Patreon basically pays my rent, pays a bunch of bills, and it's great, but like I don't like having like my entire income dependent on one website still sticking around for next year. It's like, well, it just kind of like, there's been a couple scares with Patreon where they've changed something and then people don't like it, and they just like everything kind of falls apart.
And then
and I'm just waiting for them to do one more bad thing, and then everyone's just like, well, we're not doing Patreon anymore, and I'm just like, well, don't know what I'm gonna do now.
I will always remember the time I was yelling at Jack from Patreon in a restaurant in Paris because he was trying to change the billing structure.
Just let it be, it's working.
No.
Well, I guess it's just like, I guess my advice, if somebody was like starting right now, I'd be like, make the comics that you want to make, post them in a lot of places, see where they get traction, because like obviously it's like we're talking about all these, like, whether it's your own website or like Webtoons or Twitter or Instagram, different kinds of content are going to like do better or worse on the different platforms because the audiences in it are so different, and the only way to find out is to try, right? And then, you know, like by that same extent, it's like try lots of different things if you can, to make money. But like, you know, I guess the thing for me is just like one thing for me that worked really well, like way more than a lot of people. I know Alina is in the same boat, is conventions. Like I made a ton of money at conventions until very recently, when now we don't have them anymore. You know, I remember I was talking to my mother, and she was being like, "Oh, well, maybe now, like, you know, like it's too bad, but you know, now you'll try different things, and then you won't be so reliant on that one thing anymore." And it's like I didn't want to be reliant on I do like 30 different things. It's just that was one of the things that was working, and so it's like Patreon is the same thing. I'd be very reluctant. Like I would warn people, like, you know, you don't count on this thing being around forever if it's working for you.
Enjoy it
like,
while you can.
Exactly.
Enjoy it while you can.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, but that's what the job is, right? Like, is you will try a bunch of things, and a couple of them will work, and then over time, some of them will stop working. And
in 3 years, you will have a completely different business model that no one could have predicted.
Yeah, like I do conventions, I sell shirts online, I do book Kickstarters, I do Patreon. I have ads on my site. I've been doing all of those things for several years, and like from year to year, the thing that is the main thing has been completely different. Like for income, it's like last year was this insane year for conventions, and now this year is like nothing. Like, literally zero.
Yeah, literally nothing.
But now my Patreon is like bigger than it's ever been. Like in 2012, I had this massive Kickstarter, and then like I've had some since then have all been successful, but like not on the same scale. It's, you know, like you got to be into that.
I feel like about the only thing that stayed the same for me at least is like just keep putting stuff out and like keep casting in that to find people. And like it's like a lot of people, especially with webcomics, like they'll start and then like it won't get an immediate reaction, and then they'll be like, well, why am I doing this, and quit. And a lot of people like, so that will, like, audiences will be like, well, why do I want to follow this? Why do I want to put the effort into following this if they're just going to quit in a couple of months? And like even now, like I'll go on hiatus with my comic every once in a while, and people get so scared, like, oh, another webcomic that I follow is gonna never come back because it's going on hiatus. It's like, I've been doing this for 13 years, I'm not gonna quit yet. But people are so afraid because they've been burned so many other times of I'm following this person, I really like this stuff, and they've just stopped making.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the biggest pitfall when you're starting out, right? Is you overcommit to some grandiose project that you could never hope to complete in a reasonable amount of time, and then you get burned out, and then you stop doing it, or you start doing something else. Yeah.
Or you do it for 10 years, realize you've been burnt out, and then go, how do I get out of this? And then start thinking about doing smaller projects in the future.
Yeah, if you want some like niche advice for people who have been doing comics for 10 years, I regret not continuing to update my website after I finished, but yeah, I needed a hard reset. And I'm still trying to, it's so funny, the reaction that I often get is like, I thought you quit comics. Right. It was like, I quit this comic. I have literally continued drawing comics every day since. They're just coming out in a different format, and it's so hard to get people back.
I was so afraid of that because, like, you know, even like I never made like any big announcements or anything, but like, you know, I had been running a long form story, and it was just like very clear that it was like the climax of the last book was like what was happening in the story. So I was getting messages from people being like, oh, I'm going to really be sad when, you know, there's no more comics and you're not doing the comic anymore. And I'm like, I'm not going to stop. Like, what do you think? This is my job. What else would I do?
Die.
What would you do?
So I did the thing, Jam, that I feel like you're saying you wish you did, which was that like on Friday, you know, the 17-year storyline ended, and then on Monday it was just a different thing, and I never stopped at all, and I didn't have a break, and like, you know, so I did that. It's very exhausting. It feels like I would have really liked to have had a break there, and I didn't get one. I tried to at least do some comics that were like easier for a while. And like, you know, I did retain like a portion of the audience, but still a lot of people fell off. Like maybe like 30 to 40%. Like it's just kind of natural. Like, you know.
That's actually less than I would have worried. That's pretty good.
It was not as bad as I thought, but I think it helps that like I'm still doing some of the comics I'm doing are connected to Sam in some way. Like there's certain characters that overlap or like just the same kind of sensibility. And then the other thing was for the last few years of Sam and Fuzzy, I was taking breaks between the chapters to run unrelated stuff. So I think people were used to.
Yeah, you were priming them.
Yeah, I started doing that a couple of years ago when I kind of moved away from like my central thing was more of like I'm selling my own brand and not the comic. So like if you come to Corey Bing, you'll see both the comic and then also the other things I'm interested in. And so when I kind of ease off the comic more, you can go. There's still going to be a bunch of stuff to check out, but. Also, if I was just doing the comic and not all the other things that I do, I would go bonkers because I was getting so worn out of doing the comic and not having anything else to do. I was like, what if I pivot and start doing stuff with like dinosaurs? And so that's completely separate from my comic stuff. And it's really nice to be like, I don't want to work on this. I'll work on this instead.
Yeah, totally.
That's why my comic now has 60 different characters and is actually like, it's kind of over the years, it's shifted focus so many times. Like it's honestly like maybe the third or fourth different comic that just happens to be operating under the same name now.
Yeah, I mean, Sam and Fuzzy was like that too.
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of did the same approach. It's just like change literally every single thing about the comic. But
just
don't
gotta follow what you're interested in.
I will echo that in a different way. Like one of the reasons why I really felt like I had to step away from Wasted Talent, even though I had such affection for it, is because the parameters of it I felt were just so constrained.
Yeah.
I mean, it was auto bio, it was about me, it was about engineering in Vancouver. It didn't give me a lot of room to stretch.
Yeah, sure.
And so now that I'm doing like shorter works, I can branch out into all sorts of stuff, and it's a lot more engaging, and I think I have a lot more longevity in this process.
And I feel like that enthusiasm, like people can sense it, and like if you're bored of your comic, people like your readers will know that you're bored, and your work like, oh, I don't want to follow this. This person obviously isn't having fun. But when you can continue to do something that engages you and is entertaining, your followers will also be entertained by your enthusiasm for it.
And in my experience, it's often surprising, like how much people will kind of follow you along with that too. Like my comic evolved from being like a sitcom about indie rock jokes to like existential robot romance, and people are still like super into it who have been reading it the whole time, and like it's radically different than it used to be, but they're still there. It's cool.
I mean, the people who are reading it are also probably radically different than they used to be.
True.
Yeah, but they're invested in you and your characters.
Now they're all in their 30s and they have money.
Yes. There you go.
I feel like that's the only way to, when you've been doing comics as long as we have, to keep things sort of fresh and fun and interesting for yourself, is to do these like keep it fun, because the audience knows if you're having fun when you're drawing it.
Yeah.
And if that means doing like little shorter things that interest you, then awesome. If that means like reinventing the comic, great too.
I know one thing, like when I was younger, I was afraid of doing stuff that I thought was really just self-indulgent or for no one but me. But I've learned that like if you're super enthusiastic about whatever it is you're doing, no matter how niche you think it is or how weird you think it is, like your enthusiasm is going to be infectious. And if you're having a great time,
there will be a group.
You'll find people who are just into that one exact weird niche thing that you thought that was super self-indulgent, and they're like, yes, finally, this thing I've been looking for a long time. So as long as you just keep it, like, put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to get weird with it, because there's going to be people who are just that flavor of weird, and usually, and it's also with those like neat. I don't want to turn like my readers into dollar signs or whatever, but usually if you find something that not a lot of people are enthusiastic about, the people who are really into it will be very devoted to like, oh, thank you for doing this thing that I've been trying to find for ages, and you're just as into it as I am, and let me give you some money so you can keep doing it.
No, it's true. People are supportive of things that they're that are specific, hard to find.
I feel like that applies a lot to merch if you're doing conventions.
Oh yes.
Like a lot of people, the thing was you used to try and do, I'll do it really branded for my webcomic, and I'll make the webcomic tee with my logo on it, and those never sell. But Sam and Corey, like, you both have really, really graphically interesting merch that appeals to people that has nothing to do with your comics.
Yeah.
Or it
that is
does, but you
fun
don't
and
need to
interesting.
know that.
You don't need to know that.
Exactly. It's just you're walking by and you're like, that is a really cool dinosaur pin. I want that. Or I like
Yeah.
that shirt with a corgi on it. That's amazing.
My favorite is like I got all these shirts with like President Dog or like Baker the Corgi on it, and I'll be at a convention and people be like, oh, I love these corgi shirts, or I love the thing, and I'll be like, oh, really? Well, like here's a book that's like all comics about corgis and President Dog, and but like in comic form. And they're like, oh, I mean, but the shirt is like really good.
Yeah.
But then for like, if you get those people, but then you'll also get people who are just like, oh, there's a book.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then they'll like, yeah, buy just everything. Like, oh, I like this one thing. This one character is like, well, this character is actually a character from my comic book. That's like, oh, there's more. And then they'll like grab it up, or they'll be like, I just like this one thing that has the picture on it, and then they'll leave. But you never know who it's going to be that wants to just dive head first into whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, there's always the people
diversification.
Yeah, there's always the people who are willing to take that step. It's just the sad truth, of course, is that there are more people who like T-shirts than there are who like comics. So some people are like, comics, that's cool. I don't read comics though, but I do wear clothing, so I'll buy this.
Everyone needs clothes.
Really, you don't want the opposite in most cases.
That's
People who don't wear clothes.
I don't wear
like
clothing. But...
paste comics all over yourself. But it's like I will flip that on its head though. It's like one thing that hasn't changed over the course of this is that comics are still really cool. I think comics as a medium are here to stay. They communicate so well. And I'm seeing a lot, like something that has really interested me is how well comics can communicate an idea clearly on the internet.
Yes.
It's like, other than video, it's really hard to get your point across sometimes.
There's also very few ways to like, there's the barrier for entry in comics, like to find your audience is very low compared to other sorts of things. Like you can put a cool comic on the internet, you can find a bunch of people who read it. Whereas like if you're trying to get your prose on the internet, it's a lot harder because people look at a paragraph, go, people look at a picture, go, oh, and that's another thing. And then also like with self-publishing nowadays, it's easier than ever to make a print version or to put it online to get an audience.
PDF.
Or even print on demand. Like the quality of print on demand is like gone through the roof to the point where it's almost indistinguishable.
Yeah, it's great. I've been going bonkers with risographs lately because I have access to a risograph printer. So it's just like doing this fun, weird stuff that not a lot of people see very often, and it's fun.
Yeah.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about like new ways of posting your comic online. Because I know, Jam, I was wanting to pick your brain a little bit on Webtoons, which is a way that I haven't started posting comics on there yet, but I know a lot of new readers are coming in to comics from Webtoons.
Yeah, I haven't done anything
accessible.
with Webtoons.
Sorry, Corey?
Oh, I haven't done anything with Webtoons. It's one thing that I've been kind of curious about, but I've never really looked too far into.
I was super curious as well. So here's kind of a double-edged sword with Webtoons, right? Is that the audience of people who are looking for comics specifically on Webtoons is massive. And if you can tap into even just a tiny little slice of that massive audience, you will have like more attention and more sustained attention than I think that you can get through a lot of other social media today. The flip side of that is that it is like a double down walled garden. So people who come to you from Webtoons are not leaving Webtoons. They will not click through to your site. The only thing that they allow you to link directly is Patreon. So again, like another vote for Patreon. And I have seen my Patreon increase with the exposure through Webtoon. Right. I like Webtoon because it is a very nice experience for the user. So if you are a person who is interested in comics, so like if you're curious about it, this is what I recommend. Download the app and start following a couple of Webtoons. A couple of my favorites are Lore Olympus and My Giant Nerd Boyfriend, but they've got
that's a good one.
So much. And just get a handle on what the experience is like. You get a notification.
The format is different.
The format is very, very different. And people are doing some really interesting things with it as well. But you get a notification and you pull it up. It's optimized for mobile. You scroll through. You can leave a comment. You can leave a like. You can follow very easily. It does require quite a bit of investment and quite a bit of forethought, I would say. Like if you are making a comic for Webtoon, make a comic for Webtoon.
Yeah.
But that has some implications. It's going to be way, way harder to make it for print.
Yeah.
It's like either you're going to take your comic for print, which is what I had, and invest a lot into reorganizing it so that the panels are vertical and you have a good experience.
That's been my big stopping point right now, is the idea of going through like 10 years worth of comics and reformatting them for...
It's a lot of work. I hired some freelancers to do it, to support me, because it was a tremendous investment.
Because you had a full page before.
Yeah.
With
so
like
I had
roads.
I had a 6x9 page, which is the print size. And so I organized all of my comics for that print size. And what I did is I just chopped out individual panels and laid them vertically. So it's a completely
Webtoons just scroll down.
Yeah.
Do you feel like people don't want to have more than one panel per row?
Well, that makes it easier to read on a phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't A/B tested it, but I do read my own comic and other comics when they do come up on the phone, and definitely like the larger the panel can be, the nicer that experience is.
It's really fascinating seeing how that's changed the art on Webtoon as well. Like all of these comics, particularly from Japan and South Korea, where like every panel is like a huge close-up of somebody's hands or their face, like really detailed and rendered, and it's just such a different aesthetic than you see in North American webcomics or French bande dessinée, or even like manga is different than that. It's become its own specific kind of visual language, which I think is really neat.
Agree 100%. Yeah. They will do, if you follow enough webtoons, especially ones from overseas, like they will organize their panels, their speech balloons completely differently.
Yeah.
Organized for print. They will do these kind of blending atmospherics so that you have like a gradient that brings you into the next scene, and then you have like a big expansive environmental. There's some really interesting stuff there. And like, if you're thinking of doing a short comic, try doing one for Webtoon. It's a different experience. But in terms of like the retroactive formatting, it's a kludge. I think it's not the best, but I'm trying to learn about the platform. I'm trying to reach a new audience, because like other social media, there are different people on Webtoon. There are coming to your website or meeting you through Facebook or through Instagram. They're different people. And they are people very devoted to comics.
Yeah, I feel like the people who used to get into webcomics were like, I am at work on my desktop and I'm on a break or bored, and I'm going to click through a bunch of different websites. And now that it's a lot of people coming through on phones, you really have to format things very differently, because it's now a top-down reading experience instead of left-right or right-left.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I just like, I wondered if I would be at an advantage for this, just because Sam and Fuzzy comics have always been very tall, but it's like they're still drawn with like, you know, a standard print page format shape to them. It's just that most individual updates of Sam and Fuzzy are longer than one page. They're like 1.5 or 2 or whatever. So it's in that column format, but I still feel like it's potentially too wide. Like I mean, the dialogue is like larger than usual for a comic, so like it might still be parsable, but I don't know.
Like, I think Webtoons is ideal if you do a single panel sort of stacked vertically as you scroll. Whereas if you have the full page in there, it's going to be really small and hard to read.
It's ironic that I used to do all of my comics completely vertical like that, and then several years later switched to doing a page
for print. Because it was such a pain in the ass to reformat it for print.
Exactly.
It's so funny, like the destination that you have in mind for this work.
Once again, Scott McCloud was just ahead of his time.
I know, right?
Payments, now with infinite canvas.
One comic I know specifically for me that has been reformatted for Webtoons and in a way that I really like is Lackadaisy Cats. Has been because she's got this amazing like the draftsmanship, and got this big huge book coming out, but then like she also reformats all of the pages to be vertical for Webtoons, and I find that was like, I don't know if it's just because I had it on my phone, and so I just ended up finally catching up to it after years of being like, I should catch up with that comic, I should catch up with that comic, and then it was on my phone, so I just caught up with it, or if it just was easier to read going down vertically than it was before.
Right.
But I felt like that was a really well done way of reformatting a page-by-page comic that was formatted for print that she removed everything around.
And Lackadaisy is so visually dense.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It benefits really well by being broken up like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of reflective of the way webcomics have changed, because before, like, print comics used to be a big deal for me, and I found my sales of those have really declined over the past several years.
Oh yeah.
So I think for any new project I start up now, there's going to be not as big a urge to format it specifically for print, and more just to make it as linkable and accessible as possible. Like, that's what I love about Webtoons, is you can read it anywhere. You're on a phone, you're waiting for a bus, read some comics.
Yeah.
I'm having ideas of if I want to do like new shorter comics of formatting them for Webtoons. I've got a bunch of ideas that I'm trying to think of now. I want to make a Webtoon comic.
I guess the other thing is, like, all of my Sam and Fuzzy comics are black and white, and so I always kind of wonder if it would even be worth it at this point to publish on that kind of site, because it just seems very, like, out of vogue.
Well, there's a bunch of black and white comics on Webtoons, especially like the Korean comics. A lot of them are just black and white with the screen tones and stuff. I've seen a lot of just black and white comics.
I think people don't care as much as if there's color. It's more about the story. Like,
and the readability.
Yeah. And your art is still so visually arresting.
Oh, yeah. We got about 10 minutes left here of the panel, so I'll kind of move us into final thoughts on comics and where they're going.
They're good. I like them.
They're good. Comics are good.
Great.
Make comics.
Good. Do we want to touch on Patreon? Or, like, we could do an entire panel on Patreon. It's hard to build readership. What else have we got? We're talking about Instagram.
My big advice for any of that is just to keep putting yourself out there to build readership, and where you don't let people forget that you're there. And that's just what I've been doing for a couple of years, is that just I'm here, look at my stuff, I'm still here, look at my stuff.
I've been investing very heavily in Patreon and learning a lot. I think Patreon gives you, so it used to be in webcomics where building that relationship with your audience was a major key to success, and Patreon is still the place where that is true. Post regularly, reach out to your audience, try to create an interesting experience, a unique experience. I like Patreon a lot because it allows me to maintain that relationship. That is pretty important to me.
I've discovered that people care a lot more about frequent, less important posts than infrequent big posts. So like I'll post updates on like I post my in progress shots on my comic, or just little sketches and stuff I do, and people seem to like that a lot more than here's this big huge finished illustration I did. I'll see you again in 3 months.
That's not a big deal. I'm finding also that it goes hand in hand really well with Discord.
I've got a big Discord now.
I've started a Where Geek Discord, and I'm going to start like a little role-playing server based off of it too, so my patrons can come and we'll like role-play together, because my comic's all about role-playing. But it's just a way to give extra content that isn't drawing related. It's just like, come hang out in the Discord. We'll post memes.
My Discord is kind of taking a life on its own. I have a friend of mine that is the admin there, and I kind of check in on it every once in a while, but it's kind of exploded of just people who it's got its own little community now that's kind of there's a role-playing channel and just a bunch of people. It's like, it's really fun to see how that has kind of evolved, and just having a place, because I feel like it's kind of cyclical, where like when I started comics, like having forums and message boards was a big deal, and that kind of got phased out. But like now Discord's coming back, so having like private little communities that like only the people who are part of it can really see and interact with is a big thing again. Whereas it's like not as centralized as it used to be with like everyone's on Twitter. I mean, everyone still is on Twitter, but Discord is bringing more kind of communities together again.
Well, Twitter is wild because we think everyone's on Twitter, but really it's just the people who are our age are on Twitter. Nobody younger than us is on Twitter.
You know what? This is good. We only got a few minutes left. This is good advice. Twitter is
it's bad.
God, don't use it.
Awful.
Delete your Twitter. Delete your Facebook. Don't use it.
We're all on it like all day, and we all.
It makes me feel so bad.
I just
miserable.
Like it is the social media where I have built the largest audience, and so I continue to utilize it. But like,
it's the worst.
I am not sure what the utility of it is.
It's like just feeling bad.
Yeah.
Well, and I also don't read it anymore. I still post things on it.
Yeah, I had to take a major step back from Twitter and Facebook for my mental health.
And no one's finding webcomics on Twitter these days. Like if they follow you, they already follow you. But they could just be in your Discord chatting with you.
I think like Twitter is a useful place to publish content if you are in the business of making jokes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And not necessarily in comic form or
And
not
jokes
in
you don't
comic
mind
form.
other people just taking and not giving you any credit for.
The perfect
Yeah.
tweet, even if it's a comic, is a tweet where the comic is an image, but the text that goes with the comic somehow alters the perception of the image. Like it's part. Do you know what I mean? It's like Twitter. Even an image post on Twitter is still the pairing of an image with a tweet of text, and like the relationship between those two things is very important.
Yeah.
So it's like it's great if you can post a comic and then say something in your tweet that somehow like either alters the person's perception or like sets up the punchline or something like that. But it's kind of like,
and then you get retweeted a million times and it makes you depressed because it's just a bunch of randos come in and it's awful. It's never been good.
Twitter, it's bad.
Twitter, it's never been good, TM.
You don't learn anything else from this panel. Twitter.
Yeah. Well, bye.
Well, yeah. I think that kind of feeds into just if something is you're doing just because you want audience or because it's something that you feel like you have to do. Mm-hmm. Don't do it. You don't have to. Like there's plenty of different ways to get your work out there and get people excited about it. And if you're whiling your way on a thing that makes you miserable, people are going to pick up on that and not like your stuff. So don't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And whatever works this year is not going to work next year necessarily. So.
And yeah, things change.
Yeah.
So social media seems to have seasons. And if this is not your season on this platform, don't worry about it. Invest in the place that's working for you and that you can make work.
Yeah. What's important is like your relationship with individual readers who are like heavily invested in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. The kind of like ethereal nature of like likes and retweets on social media where like you make a post and it's very popular. Like it doesn't probably ultimately have any impact in you or your life or your work or your income or anything. It's like cool to make a thing that's popular, but like the most popular thing I've ever posted on the internet by far is like an image joke I made about like Kirby and Mario, and like I'm glad that lots of people got enjoyment out of it, but like it's had no impact on my life, and most people don't even know that I'm the one who drew it. It's like what's important is like the small audience that I have that's regularly reading those comics. Like those are the people who care about what I'm doing, and they're the people who will support you.
And they'll move platforms with you. So
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like Corey has been saying throughout this panel, just put yourself out there and keep putting yourself out there. Comics are still great. People are still reading them.
Yeah.
It'll
more than ever.
It's
comics
true,
are great.
I guess that's the thing that really hasn't changed about webcomics since we started is post regularly, post frequently, post reliably, have fun. Do it kind of for yourself, and then other people will join it.
Yeah. And try and get two guys on a couch.
Yeah. Talk about video games.
Video games. Have two guys on a couch and one inanimate object that's sassy.
Yeah.
And you're set.
And make sure your comic is named something like regular guy's name and then wacky animal name.
I like it.
Bob and Chaz.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. It's a perfectly good name format. Everyone loves it.
Like this is ending on a big Sam burn.
Yep.
We love you,
And
Sam.
burn on Sam. Bye.
Bye. We're out.
It was a phase, the guy and guy phase. Then it was followed by the phrase that's a URL that no one has bought yet, but has nothing to do with your comic.
Another thing I will say about Webtoons is I am glad that it has allowed me to have a friendship with all of you for so many years.
Yay! That's the best part.
I have met some of the best people via webcomics.
Yeah, me too.
So.
You guys are all awesome. I love you.
And it's not just because we're all just dying from not being able to see anyone for 2 months. I do genuinely like all of you.
I like everyone except Sam. I love Sam.
Aw, shucks.
Oh, shucks.
Anyway, let's wrap it up here on this whole love fest. Thanks.
All right.
Thank everybody for listening. Have
Thanks
fun
for
out
putting this
there.
together.
Stay safe. Yeah.
Wash your hands.
VanCAF.
Wash your
We'll
hands.
see you next year.
Yeah, see you next year. In person, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We are peacing out.
All right.
Bye.
Yay, bye. Hooray.
Yes.